Well, hello everyone. We're trying out Go Live. I have absolutely no idea how this is going to go. It has been a very long time since I went live. None of this that I see on my screen looks anything like what I saw before. But what we're going to do is, rather than take questions via the contact form at suspiciousobservers.org, I'm just going to wait for you guys to type in your questions right here, and we'll answer them as they go. These questions should probably be about Earth's disaster cycle, but if you want to make them about solar climate forcing, I can tell already I'm not going to be able to follow all of these comments. Holy moly. If you want to make it about cosmology, about space weather in general, there we go. Let's see here. Oh, I see Suspect Skies on. That's nice. Okay, first question I'm going to ask you. Does anybody have any idea how somebody actually handles this when there's this many questions coming up all at once? Great googly moogly. All right, so here's how we're going to have to do this. I do know from previous experience that super chats stick up at the top for a minute. So if you want your question answered, try a super chat. That'll probably be the best chance of your best chance of actually getting that one answered. I don't even think my eyes work this quickly. That's pretty impressive. Oh, there's an interesting one. Do I think the pyramids, like the pyramids in Bosnia, could be a safe place? It's a good question. I don't know. I'd love to have a pyramid to go hide in, provided you're at high enough altitude. I think that might actually work, but tough to know. Oh, there's a good one. Can Saturn light up once again during this solar system shift? Very possible. Saturn or Jupiter. It'd be tough, really kind of tough to tell which one, but we've seen a lot of different changes on all the planets during the solar system shift due to the galactic current sheet actually coming in and affecting the entire solar system. What's to say that, Mars is waking up. Who's to say that Jupiter and Saturn couldn't elevate themselves another level there? Really interesting. Thanks for the super chat there, Eric. I don't see a question associated with it, but same with Kevin. Thank you. E-Rock, thank you. All right, just for a second, can you guys look over at this chat section and see how fast this is going? Holy moly. I'd like to know what Ben thinks of Ben Quaker's sedition, subversion, and sabotage. I don't have any idea what that is. Sounds interesting, though. Do I know of any communities forming in the U.S. that are in the understanding of truth you speak of? Yeah, they call them the suspicious observers. Okay, there's an interesting one about sunspot forecasting, beta, gamma, delta class magnetic fields. There's some great stuff on this in our Sun series playlist, but essentially that magnetic view that you can get of the sunspots where some are red, some are blue. It's where you need blue and red really together mixing around before you're going to see any kind of significant solar flare activity whatsoever. Guys, thank you very much for those super chats. I was thinking you might want to put a question in there too, so I could see it and answer it, but it's okay. I still thank you very much. Question about sundive and comets. Are they having any connection to the ongoing event? Tough to say, really. We didn't really have a coronagraph decades and decades and decades ago, but we do know that they're fairly regular. Somebody's asking how Devon in the UK will fare presumably in the upcoming catastrophe. You know, the United Kingdom scares me, a lot of parts of it. The waves should be pretty tremendous there. If the sun knocks out power any significant time before the actual pole shift, might be tough to survive there on such a tiny little place with all those people on the island. But let's say you have a place that actually can be safe in the UK, and you do manage to stay away from all the hungry people in the disaster. And let's just say, let's go take it a step further. Let's say the sun doesn't take out power before the actual zenith, the micronova, and the flipping over. You get to high altitude, you've got a cave, and you emerge pretty pretty solid. It might not be too bad if you can manage to survive everything involved in the catastrophe. The UK should end up in a pretty good place after the pole shift. But let me just actually take a look here. Take a look at where Devon is in the UK. Oh dear. Okay, my answer is no. That is in the southern part. Yeah, the Atlantic is basically going to attack that area. You'd need to be as high as you can possibly be right there. The good news is you're not really that close to London. You probably would have a good chance of being away from people. But yeah, the Atlantic is going to attack that area pretty good. Laura, what is the best way to inform my family who made fun of me when trying to explain things previously? Oof. This would tie back into the idea that you can't even lead this horse to water and then try to make them drink. You got to just sit there at the lake and wait for a horse to show up, and then look at you and be like, "You got anything to say?" Um, this one, people will not let you ram it down their throats. Um, Basically, the world is coming up with um, more and more ways to wake people up. And I think that that's a good thing. And basically, you got to wait for them to see something in the news or in the weather or something else that catches their attention. And then you've got to be ready to jump on it. In terms of interjecting yourself and interjecting these ideas, by and large, now it's not 100%, but for the most part, I have seen virtually no success people have had with this. It's a real shame, but people need to find this community, find these topics on their own, or else you kind of just look like that dude from Ancient Aliens who's like, I'm not saying it was aliens, but it's aliens. I know that's probably not the answer you want to hear, but it is what it is. Ben, do you have any information about safe places in Brazil? Brazil scares me for another reason, because with the magnetic pole shift and then the geographic pole shift, that place should really be an Arctic or Antarctic tundra after this. The Atlantic is going to attack twice, once in the initial tilt and then in the slosh back. Obviously, it would be better on the western side of the country than the eastern side of the country. But I mean, even after that, you've got a really solid chance to be covered in snow and ice very, very quickly. Um, and so there's that, unfortunately. Not saying that nobody will survive in Brazil, but it's going to be a lot more challenging in Brazil than in many other countries, um, because of the tsunamis, um, and because of the cold after the pole shift. Now, if we're talking about, um, when the sun takes out power to whenever else, that interim period, yeah, okay, there's plenty of good spots in Brazil. But in terms of the big disaster now, Brazil really does scare me a lot. I'd want to be on the western side, somewhere where you could get to the mountains if you could. Question from Ancient AU: Are you progressing with reaching out to Dr. Jordan Peterson? No, I am not. I wish. Um, that'd be nice. Somebody's asking me if Alaska's safe. Parts of it, maybe. But the parts of it that are most safe, I can tell you definitively, that's where, if the sun takes out power a decade before the flip, whew, you got a tough road surviving those winters in the cold and other things like that. And without, anything coming to the store, it truly is. Um, so it's a yes and a no. There are parts of Alaska that absolutely are going to be safe in the aftermath, probably from the tsunamis even, but the challenge would be before the zenith of the event. Can you actually get to the cosmic Super Bowl? So there's that. Premonition, nice name. In Missouri, is it safe for my community? Mm, I know that there has long been talk about the Ozarks. Um, I don't love the Ozarks. I don't think that they're going to be able to withstand the waves that are coming from the Gulf of Mexico. Don't forget, last time the Pacific broke through the Rockies, I think the Atlantic is going to break through the Appalachians, not over the tallest peaks, but certainly the valleys. The Ozarks are not as tall, and it's really close to New Madrid. So, or I guess New Madrid, however you want to say it. I've had people yelling about how I say that name in the comment sections before. I think the center of the country is going to get absolutely rocked by that fault line, and then the Gulf of Mexico is going to come sweeping in. Surely, there's probably somewhere you can survive this in Missouri. Wouldn't be my first pick in the United States. Forbidden Clue asks, how about an SO dating service? Love from VA. Yeah, I don't even know how I would start doing that. Not to mention that if there were any predators on there or anything negative happened, who does everybody look at for why something went wrong? It would be fantastic, though. I've talked to a lot of people who they're either single right now or they are thinking about becoming single because their significant other just doesn't want to hear anything about this. It's a constant source of acrimony between them. In theory, it'd be a great thing to have. I have no idea how we'd set up that, or even just not even the dating site, but just a connection for groups to get together. I don't want to be in charge of everybody's personal information. I don't want your personal information. I don't want to take extra steps to worry about getting hacked and other things like that. And plus, how do I vet everybody to make sure there's no creepos or weirdos, things like that? That goes for both a dating service and a community organization page. Lenora Short, I have my bug out place in Ontario, Canada. However, my friends want to know where you feel it is safe. Ontario, provided that you're not in a position where either the initial tilt or the sloshback is going to have one of the nearby lakes take out where you are, it should be pretty okay in the aftermath of everything. The problem, again, is it doesn't exactly stay super warm there in the winter. If the sun takes out power any significant time before the actual tilt, it's going to be a big challenge of surviving those winters. Not to mention that for a lot of Ontario, and you didn't specify where in Ontario, kind of a big place, there could be lots of nearby population to deal with. And the most dangerous aspect of this is arguably other people who are hungry, who are thirsty, who realize that they are in survival mode, things like that. And so isolation to a certain degree is favorable. Let me scroll down a little bit here. At what range of flare outburst is needed to unlock the crust? Probably the micronova, if I had to guess. Yeah, if we get an X1000, which they say happens every 6,000 years or so, it's possible that could do it with the induced currents. We're talking about something where if we get that kind of event on the sun, it's all over. There is no more power in the world. There's no more society. There's no more anything but you and nature. So I would say, in the at least X 3-digit range, X100, X200, or the solar micronova would probably be what's needed to unlock the crust there. Make sure I'm not missing anything here. Okay. Just another one. Safe altitude in the lower SA at sea level. I don't exactly know what the lower SA is. And first of all, I think you mean safe elevation. Altitude refers to how far up off the ground you are, as opposed to elevation being how high up from sea level you are. It's different every part of the world. Obviously the safe altitude, safe elevation, look what you did to me, in the center of the country is very different from the safe elevation next to, 100 miles from a coastline, things like that. For the places that aren't expected to take the massive wave this time, which would be, parts of California. I'm not saying they're not going to take any waves, but it's not going to be as bad as the last one, not going to be as bad as the Gulf of Mexico attacks the center of the country, not going to be as bad as the Atlantic attacks the East Coast. So in California, you don't need to be as high as you'd need to be in, say, the Appalachian Mountains, but it's fairly relative. And if you're not very high up, could be very challenging. Eastern Oklahoma, 906 feet of elevation. That one's a maybe. That one's a maybe. I do think that the Gulf of Mexico is going to make it to the Great Lakes and up into Canada, but it will take the path of lowest resistance. I'm not looking at an elevation map of the center of the U.S. right now. 906 feet of elevation isn't a lot. It's also not nothing. And don't forget the run-up doesn't care as much about your overall elevation as it does about relative. So if you're at 900, something that's just basically flat like this all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico, the run-up will take it right there. If you are in a hill in the middle of Oklahoma, hundreds of feet above all the surrounding areas, that's different. It's got a lot of ways to go around you. And the inertia of the ocean won't matter as much. Do you see climate change in NV of the sun? How do you see climate change in NV of the sun? Wish I knew what you meant by that. Climate change in Nevada? I mean, is that what the question is asking? The climate change we get before the main event of this is only going to be in these minor increments that we've seen thus far. It's really not going to be until the magnetic field really tanks or the sun really tanks us that we actually see something fantastic like that. And by fantastic, I mean not so fantastic. Jacqueline, Graham Hancock, Ancient Apocalypse, episode 8, minute 1650. Watch it, Ben. Report back via YouTube. Make contact with the greatest of respect. Robert Schock talks to me. Anthony Perrette, Randall Carlson. I've sat with Nassim. I've sat with Greg Britton. I've sat with David Wilcock. The only one who refuses to speak to me is Graham Hancock. He either ignores me outright or he is unfathomably rude to me. So no, I am done trying with that guy. And now his head is the size of Montana after this Netflix series, which he gets wrong. It is not just an impactor. It's not a comet. It is the sun. Yeah, they have evidence of the microva everywhere, but they refuse to hear it. And it's not like they haven't heard that side of the story before. They definitely have. They just choose to ignore it. Oh, I missed one there. Man, this is challenging with all these comments. How do I become an active participant at the ranch? For the time being, the only new individuals we are taking on, and that includes people who actually want to be a permanent part of the ranch. When I say permanent, I mean permanent, would be people who are trying to become investors right now, get in the door at this early stage while we're still in construction. Plenty of chances to come to the ranch once it opens. Plenty of chances for anybody who lives nearby to have a more active role in the ranch. There's obviously not an unlimited amount of space, but for now, the only way to become an active participant is to be one of the investors, in which case go to observerranch.com and send us an email. Is it possible that the tilt does not happen, that there is no unlocking? I'm not Jesus. Everything is possible. The problem is you can't account for all the evidence without it, whether that's the stories of the sun rising in the wrong place, the stories of the long night that the tribe thought would never end. They thought they were going to freeze to death. The alternating layers of polar, tropical fossils found in the Arctic. There's too many pieces of evidence that you can't just discount and be like, oh, okay, well, we're just going to forget about that evidence for a while. No. You have to answer all the evidence, and it's really hard to do that. I don't know how you do that without actually tilting the world and having it go back, or tilting the world and then having it tilt the same way. Basically, the polar regions keep flipping back and forth. Without that, it's really, really a challenge. I don't know of any possible way to answer all of the evidence. J-Mate, as this cycle progresses, it will become more and more difficult for people to ignore what's going on. Grateful to be ahead of the game. Yeah, you're absolutely right, and you're very welcome. It is tireless work, often thankless sometimes as well. But then again, also sometimes that's not the case, as is the case right here with JMA. So thank you very much. And I do think it'll be really hard for people to ignore this in the years ahead. Like I said, don't worry about cramming it down their throats now. The universe and the earth and the sun are snitches. They're not trying to keep this a secret. They're going to snitch on this. It's coming. Just have patience. Is there a good radio frequency to listen to solar activity? I have no idea. I know that it requires pretty sophisticated radio telescopes to get any kind of reading on the sun. That's a topic I don't really know much about. I apologize, Kevin. That's a fantastic question. You might want to talk to some ham folks, or maybe send an email to somebody at the Very Large Array, ALMA, or some of the other places that actually have these powerful radioscopes. Getting a device that can actually listen in is another matter. Excellent question. Wish I had a better answer for you, but thank you very much for the contribution nonetheless. Really do appreciate it. I make one little scroll and it goes all the way down to the latest comment. Holy moly. All right. Scrolling, scrolling, scrolling. Enhance. My G from WW. What's up, man? I'm not the top G. Many of you know who that is, but I appreciate it. Maybe I'm the top O. We'll take that one. What would our warning time be? Plus or minus 1 hour, 1 day, presuming that's in terms of, all right, so I'll just give the answer to a couple of them. In terms of there being a solar flare that knocks out power to the world, could just be a couple of hours. I think the micronova is going to give itself away. I think that the sun is going to turn red and then black, maybe for, I don't know, 3 days, which give you pretty good warning time to get out of Dodge. Once the micronova occurs, when we get hit by the shell, that's pretty much when the crust unlocks, because when we get hit by the shell, we get the superstorm, the current is induced immediately all the way down through the mantle to the core, and that's going to unlock the low velocity zone that is currently locking the crust to the mantle. So there's that. Good question, though. By the way, we're gonna call it like another 5 minutes here or so of people taking in questions. So after that point, I'll have to apologize if I don't get to your question. How's Vancouver Island looking? Could the mountaintops be okay or just too close to the ocean? I would imagine there are mountaintops that could be safe from the water. The problem is the seismic activity and the potential for volcanoes along the entire West Coast just terrifies the bejesus out of me. Yeah, okay, it's possible that those could avoid you. It's a risk. It's a risk. Not to mention that I can't sit here and guarantee you that you're going to be safe from the water anywhere on Vancouver Island. Don't forget, I think that the shell impact is going to happen while the Pacific is facing the sun. You get that major arc discharge, the entire Pacific is going to slosh like crazy. And so that's something to consider. No guarantees, but it's a different sort of set of circumstances that you'd have to be concerned about there. Thomas says Graham Hancock is part of the many disinformation, or maybe that meant to be something else, disinformation. But I have always found his arrogance and his disrespect to be quite disillusioning and confusing, given how many of the other individuals who are, quote, top dogs in this part of information sharing are happy and eager to talk to me about pretty much anything. Most of those people I mentioned earlier, I've got their numbers in here. I can call them right now and they'll pick up the phone. Many of them will pick them up on one ring. Not Graham. Anyway, who cares? Devon, UK again. We're in the North Devon, the highest cliffs on the British mainland at 1,350 feet. Do we stand a good chance at this height? You know, maybe. The good news is with land to the north of you, the slosh back won't be as bad. But I would be lying if I told you I knew exactly what elevation you needed to be in Devon, UK. I just know that the water is going to run up. Like I said, it's a risk. It's just a risk. I can't tell you you're completely screwed either. It's better than being in London, put it that way. Laura says, thank you for answering everybody's questions over and over. Watch the playlist. People are scared whether they are part of suspicious observers or not. People these days seem to have increasing attention deficit. Yup. They do not seem to have the ability to sit still and watch. Yup. I actually looked before I started this Q&A. I say, or somebody else says, watch the playlist 30 to 40 times a day. But no, we are living in the rapid transition on TV shows, the TikTok world, where people's attention span is very, very tiny. And unfortunately, there is no tiny amount of focus that can get you through this. Excellent comment, Laura. Thank you very much. I'm with you 100%. You are absolutely correct. Now I do the scroll, 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 scroll. Are you familiar with the work by Jason from Archaic's YouTube channel? His work is more on the esoteric side. I have not spent time studying it. I have heard people say that our stuff sort of ham and eggs together and it somewhat supports each other. I've heard people say he has a little bit more definitive of an end date for all this stuff. Maybe I'll get a chance to. I'm very busy, but for the time, if he's on the same basic path and he's waking folks up, more power to him, and I wish him the best of luck in all this stuff. If he wants to send me an email, I would happily look at it and happily respond. Ralph says, thanks for everything you do. I really appreciate that, Ralph. That all these kind comments really do actually hit. Really appreciate them a lot. Scrolling. I'll answer maybe one or two more. Have you tried getting unbanned from Twitter yet? Buddy, I am back on Twitter, and I'm having a blast. Space Weather News at Sun Weatherman. It's in the links in the social media below. I'm on Twitter every day, and I'm loving it. I'm having a blast there. Let's see. I will have to go at 45 past the hour here due to a previous engagement. Depopulation campaign will get us first. Very possible it's going to get a lot of us. I don't think the elites are done screwing with us just yet. But that's just a guess. Mass migration happening all over the world. Governments know and are purposely allowing people to flee from countries that won't do well. Maybe, although a lot of the places that they're fleeing from and to are either, wouldn't necessarily support the notion that it's all benign. Certainly might be, though. Interesting. All right, and I guess this is the last one. Alan Shepard, no question, just a thank you. Learned from other people's questions, things to think about for sure. Awesome, guys. All right, well, that's about it for today. Watch the playlist below the video, and I'll see you in the morning for the daily show. Thanks for being here. Be safe, everyone.